Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. Hope you are doing a great job and utilizing your time to enhance your learning skills and making a good exam preparations as well. Our today's lecture is the continuation of the physiology of the digestive tract, and hope you would have learned the previous lecture so that the upcoming knowledge would be quite easy for you to absorb, and you can go with the new things and the terminologies quite easily. Let's start our lecture. Okay, so here we go with the esophagus. As I've told you in the previous lecture, that we need to go with each component and part of the digestive system to understand their functional importance in the digestive activity. And we have studied up till mouth in the previous lecture. Here we go with the esophagus. So esophagus is a alimentary canal, which is the part of the alimentary canal which connect the throat to the stomach. In humans, it is a muscular tube like structure, like it's a tubular structure which is lined with the mucous membrane. And the esophagus receives food from our mouth when you swallow by means of a series of the muscular contractions that we just studied about the the chewing reflex in the last lecture, that how the rebound contraction of the jaw muscles take place. It results in closure of our teeth, and it making the food more fine to pass away to the esophagus. So here it is the food reaches to the esophagus by means of series of the muscular contraction, which is known as peristalsis, and peristalsis is the involuntary process of the muscular contraction. And the esophagus is located behind the windpipe or the trachea. Like trachea can be felt quite easily by placing our hand in front of our neck, and immediately behind the windpipe or the trachea there is esophagus. And it tightens and relaxes, it's a contraction and relaxation, or you can say a wave like movement along the tube. So this motion cause the food to move down to the stomach, and the lowest end of the esophagus connected to the stomach, and this is called the gastroesophageal junction, like the part where the esophagus is getting connection with the stomach, and that part or that point is known as gastroesophageal junction. Okay, so the esophagus show the two type of movement, the primary peristalsis and the secondary peristalsis. Now, what's the difference between primary and secondary peristalsis? The primary peristalsis is a way which passes from the pharynx to the stomach within like 8 to 10 seconds, and gravity also plays an important part, as in a standing position the ball is moved more rapidly to the stomach. Like when we are sitting, like there is a gravitational effect. Like in a standing position, there is a gravity, you can say a gravitational pull or a force which is acting in our in all the at all the organs in our body. And due to that gravitational pull or the effect, the movement of the bolus from the mouth to the esophagus and from esophagus to the stomach is quite easily. And in the secondary peristalsis, there is the wave-like motion which starts due to the distension of the esophagus by the retained food, like when the food particles are holding the esophagus. These generated when the primary peristalsis leave a small portion of the food in the esophagus. These waves continue until the food is emptied into the stomach. and these waves are initiated by the enteric nervous system, and they are involuntary as well. So up till the previous slide, that was all about the esophagus, and immediately after esophagus we come with the stomach. And as we all know that stomach is a very vital organ, in which the major part of the digestion of the food does occur. Like in the whole digestive tract, the most important organ is the stomach, because the major portion of the digestive activity do take place in the stomach. And it's a pear shaped enlargement of the alimentary canal, linking the esophagus to the small intestine. Like in between the esophagus and small intestine, there lies a enlargement of the tract, which is known as stomach. And the transit time of the food in stomach is 4 to 5 hours, and the pH of the stomach is 2 to 6. And the gastric secretions, as we all know that the stomach releases the secretions or the juices which are known as gastric juices, which do perform their digestive activity on the food particles, or the food content which the stomach has received. And the gastric secretion is stimulated by a number of hormones and the chemical substances by the presence of the food in the stomach, that ensure the more secretion of the gastric juices, which do act on the food which is passed to the stomach. And the stomach has four main functions, and the first one is the temporary storage of the food. Definitely stomach can't store the food more than 4 to 5 hours, and during that time, when the food is present in our stomach, there is a continuous, like you can say, a continuous activity on the food is taking place. And this temporary storage of after the temporary storage of the food is passes down to the small intestine, and mixing of the food with the gastric secretions until it form a semi-fluid mixture, which is called chyme. So the third function of the stomach is a digestion of the food, and it controls the rate at which the food enters the duodenum, which is the very first part of the small intestine. And the mucosa, or the inner lining of the stomach, is exposed to the highly corrosive acidity of the gastric juice. As we have studied that the pH of the gastric secretions is 2 to 6, that is corrosively acidic in nature. And the gastric enzymes that can digest the protein can also digest the stomach itself, like the enzymes which are being present in a gastric juice, which is released by the mucosal lining of the stomach. It has got such a intensity that it can digest the stomach wall itself. So the stomach is protected from the self digestion by a mucosal barrier. The mucosal barrier, you can say, say a kind of barrier which do protect the stomach walls from the acid which is being released from the walls of the stomach, so that that acid or those secretions do not work on the wall or the musculature of the stomach. Instead, they do work on the food which is being taken. And this barrier has several components. First, the stomach wall is covered by a thick coating of the bicarbonate rich mucus, and this mucus form a physical barrier, and its bicarbonate ions neutralize the acid. Okay, so the stem cells quickly replace the damaged epithelial mucosal cells of the stomach. Definitely, when the epithelial cells are shed, in fact, the surface epithelium of the stomach is completely replaced in between every 3 to 6 days. Okay, and the stomach participates in all the digestive activities except ingestion and defecation. It vigorously churns the food. It mixes up the food to make it a semi-fluid content. It secretes the gastric juices that break down the food and absorb the certain drugs, including the aspirin and some alcohol. Like the absorption of the aspirin, like the nitroglycerin, was being absorbed in the mouth. Okay, when that's placed under the tongue. and when that's taken orally, definitely the route for the absorption is changed. But some of the drugs like aspirin and some alcohol are absorbed in the stomach, and the stomach begins the digestion of the protein and continues the digestion of carbohydrates and fat. It stores food as an acidic liquid, which is called the chyme, or you can say the semi-fluid solid, and releases it gradually into the small intestine through the pyloric sphincter. Now, do you remember the junction between the esophagus? Actually, stomach is lying in between the small intestine, or you can say the very first part of the small intestine, that was duodenum, and the from the proximal end it was connected to the esophagus. So the pyloric sphincter do exist in between the duodenum and the stomach. Okay, so here we come up with gastric secretions, or you can say the gastric juice. The mucosa in the cardiac and the pyloric regions of the stomach releases the mucus that helps to protect the lining of the stomach from the acid which is produced for the digestion. All right. The mucus which is releases in the stomach part, and that protect the lining of the stomach from the acid or the secretions which is being produced in the stomach. And there are the parietal cells are among the most highly differentiated bodies epithelial cells, and these relatively large cells which produce the hydrochloric acid. So parietal cells are the cells which are specialized in the production of the hydrochloric acid, and the gastrin help to stimulate the release of the acid and enzymes from the mucosa, and gastrin also help the muscles of the stomach to start contracting. And then we come up with the pepsin. There's another enzyme which convert the protein into simpler, more easily absorbed substances. It is aided in its by a hydrochloric acid, which provide the acidic environment which the pepsin is in which the pepsin is most effective. Actually, pepsin need a acidic environment to perform its function, and so that acidic environment is provided by hydrochloric acid, which was released by parietal cells in the stomach. All right. Then we come up with the renin, which are the digestion of the milk protein, or you can say the dairy protein as well, and then the gastric amylase, which do act on a carbohydrate, and the gastric lipase, which act on lipids. And the stomach does not play a big role in absorption of the food. It must be clear. It only absorbs the water, alcohol, and some drugs, which has been mentioned already. Okay, so in this slide we go with the diagrammatic representation of the stomach, which showing a musculature structure. It's the stomach. You can see the esophagus and the gastroesophageal junction, which is actually lying between the esophagus and the stomach. Then you can say its greater curvature, its lesser curvature, its body, and the antrum, pylorus, and as well, and funda similarly. Now what you have to do with this diagram is, first you need to learn the part, the every part. Like you should be very clear to locate the different parts. You should be able to draw the diagram so that you can identify different parts, and you have to locate the different part. First you will draw the diagram, then you will mention different names, then you will learn it so that you can have a better idea that which part is lying. And definitely when you will learn about all the parts, and you will come up with the a function as well. Do you remember in our previous lectures, like I was used to ask you that you need to draw a diagram, and after drawing the diagram you need to label that, and when you will label the diagram, then you must know the function and the functional activity of all those parts which you have labeled in your diagram. So it's also your assignment. You need to draw the diagram, then you will label it, and then all the labeling parts, the names, like you have mentioned 4 to 5 or the 6 or even 10 names, you have labeled 10 names. You must know about the functional activity of all those 10 labeled names. Okay, here in this slide we go with the functions of the stomach. which include the storage. Storage on average it can store up to 1.5 to 2 liter, which can expand to 3 to 4 liter, while empty its volume is only 0.08 liter, which is 40 times less, which point at its enormous elasticity. Okay, means its volume is just 40 times less as compared to the volume which is being taken to the stomach. And its next function is the mixing and propulsion of the food in intestine, as we have already discussed about that. When stomach is filled with the food, it weak the peristaltic activity, or the mixing waves move towards the antrum of the stomach. These waves move down to the stomach and cause mixing of the food with the secretion, resulting in formation of chyme. Again, the chyme. Okay, so the gastric emptying, what happened here? It occurs when the food is broken down into the small pieces enough to pass through the pyloric sphincter. Each time the chyme is pushed against the pyloric sphincter. Now you must know that the sphincters were controlled and relaxes by which system that we have already discussed. And you must know where the pyloric sphincter is lying. And definitely you can be very clear about all of these stuff when you have learned the previous lecture, and when you would have practiced the diagram. And so the pyloric sphincter is the small amount like 2 to 7 ml, which escapes in the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine. Now the factors that promote the emptying of the stomach, it's the food volume or the gastrin. How does the food volume promote the emptying of the stomach? Like when a person swallows the food, the stomach walls are stretched, definitely, which in turn increase the activity of the pyloric pump and relaxes the pyloric sphincter, promoting the gastric emptying, definitely, so that you can have more food. And if your stomach isn't having that like that activity, how would you be able to have a more food? Okay, and then the gastric, which release the cause motility of the stomach to increase with relaxing the pyloric sphincter and promoting the gastric emptying. Okay, what do gastric does is this: it causes the motility of the stomach to increase with relaxing of the pyloric sphincter. Okay, the first thing, the pyloric sphincter would definitely be relaxed, so that the content of the stomach can be pushed towards the duodenum or the small intestine. But the earlier step to pushing the food towards the duodenum is the movement or the motility of the stomach itself, which is promoted by the gastrin. Okay, like in the previous slide we have learned about the factors which are ensuring the gastric emptying. And here we come up with the factors that inhibit the emptying. Okay, that like just stir the content for the long period of time in the stomach, instead of passing that food content to the small intestine. So it includes the enterogastric reflex, which elicited by the distension of the duodenum, irritation of the duodenal mucosa. Like it's all about your small intestine. Definitely when you don't have enough space to accommodate some of the material, how will you let something to be there? So the food from the stomach will move to the duodenum, and when there is the distension of the duodenum, like there isn't proper wave like propulsive movement in the duodenum, what will duodenum do? If it's continuously receiving its food from the stomach, but itself it's not able to pass the food next to the large intestine, or to do the rest of the activity. So the irritation of the duodenal mucosa as well, and acidity of the duodenal chyme, protein, and the large amount of fat as well. And the next is the hormone, which include the secretin or the cholecytokine, and the gastric inhibitory peptide. All of these hormones which do hold the food in the stomach instead of passing that food to the duodenal. And the secretions, the stomach secrete the gastric juices, which act as digestive fluid. We have already learned about that. Then the antiseptic function, the parietal cells, parietal cells which were secreting the hydrochloric acid, which act as antiseptic against the swallow bacteria. Definitely when we are actually taking up the food, there are some sort of you can say the bacteria which we are taking up with our food, even from the air and even in the food as well. So we are need to be clear with all of those bacteria or all of those things to have a proper digestion, so that the nutritional value of the food may not get affected with that. And next we come up with the digestion. In the presence of the gastric juice, the stomach digests protein to the peptons or the pepsin, and the milk coagulation by the renin, and digestion of food and the lipids by lipase, hydrolysis of food by HCl, and digestion of carbohydrates by amylase. There we have already learned about all this stuff. Then the absorption of the water, glucose, alcohol, and certain drugs. You will study in pharmacology, I guess, about the absorption of the drugs. But what you need to learn is about the aspirin that we have already discussed. That the absorption of the aspirin that take place in the stomach are absorbed from the stomach, and the parietal cells excrete the intrinsic factor which is necessary for the absorption of vitamin B12. Okay, students. So now we come up with the small intestine. Definitely, moving ahead from the stomach, we need to go towards the small intestine, where virtually all of the absorption of the useful material of the digestive content take place, and the whole of the small intestine is lined with the absorptive mucosal type cells. The intestine also has a smooth muscle wall with the two layer of muscles, like the rhythmical contractions force the production of the digestion to move through the intestine. See, the alimentary canal, as it was already discussed, that it's a tubular structure. Okay, from esophagus onward up till the anus, it's a tubular structure. And in a tube-like structures, there usually happen rhythmical or a wave-like motions. See, in our whole digestive system, actually there is a wave-like movement which is ensuring the movement or pushing of the food from one part to the next one. So the similar thing is happening in the small intestine, because again the food is not going to be stored here for a long period of time. From small intestine it need to move towards the large intestine as well. So here again we need it's a wave like motion, so that food can easily be pushed from small intestine to the large intestine. So there are three main sections of the small intestine, and like small intestine is divided into three main parts, which is the duodenum, which is the quite earlier or the very first part, moving from stomach towards the small intestine. We come up with the duodenum, then it's come jejunum, then it's the ileum. Okay, what happened in duodenum, its main function is to neutralize the acidic gastric content. See, the food is actually coming up from the stomach. Definitely it will have mix up with the gastric secretions that we have already discussed in the stomach, that it says mix up with the hydrochloric acid and the other secretions. So the food which is being pushed from stomach to the duodenum right now is acidic in nature. And what does duodenum do is it neutralizes the acidic gastric content, which was known as the chyme, and to initiate the further digestion, because that digestion which has been taken place up to the stomach, it's not enough. Okay, when the food is moving to the small and the large intestine, the rest of the digestive activity definitely would take place in these two parts as well. So the Werner's gland in the submucosa secretes an alkaline mucus. Definitely there are some things, there are some specialized or the highly fashioned cells, or you can say glands, which are occurring in the different digestive parts. What do they do over there is this: they do release some sort of secretions which do help to make a foodie contact more refined, so that it can move to the next gastric part, or it can undergo the digestive activity quite easily. So the Werner gland, which is being present in the small intestine or in the submucosa, it secretes an alkaline mucus which neutralizes the chyme and protect the surface of the duodenum, and in this part of the food further breaks down into the smaller pieces. So food is up till the small intestine See how the food is further, like each and every part of the digestive system letting the food particles to be more refined, to be more smaller in size, and like each part is playing its own role. And next we come up with the ileum. The jejunum and the ileum are greatly coiled parts of the small intestine, okay, and together they are about 4 to 6 meters long. Their length is about 4 to 6 meter long, and they both are used in absorption of the nutrients and send them to the bloodstream. The mucosa of this section is highly folded, increasing the surface area available for the absorption. See, the availability of the surface area is actually directly proportional to the rate of the absorption of the food which is being taken up till here to the small intestine. Okay, here we go with the diagrammatic representation of the digestive tract, which is starting here in this diagram. The digestive presentation is starting from the, you can say, the stomach to the anus or the rectum, but we know that the digestive system is actually starting from our mouth. So here you need to learn each and every part. Similarly, the instruction for this diagrammatic presentation are same as were for the stomach. If any one of you don't understand that what you have to do with this presentation, you can move up to the slide of the stomach, and there you can get the points. Okay. The inner lining of the small intestine is folded back and forth to increase the surface area for the better nutrient absorption, and these folds create a microscopic finger-like projections that are called the villi. Over 90% of the ingested carbohydrates and protein are absorbed here in the small intestine. See, when we do have a like long piece of cloth and it is folded back and forth on it, and it just become a very small in volume in the size, but as soon as we unfolded that long piece of the cloth, and we can get a long like length of that cloth part. Similarly, the same case happened with the small intestine, that it is folded back and forth, and it helps to increase the nutritive absorption, like it increase the absorption area for the nutrient of the food, and all the inner lining of the small intestine has got very minute finger like projections which are known as villi, and each villi has its own blood supply, and the blood containing digestive product from the small intestine is taken to the liver via hepatic portal system. Okay, I guess in the next lecture we'll study about all the accessory glands or accessory organ of the digestive system. In these two lectures we have covered up with the all the actual and the basic part of the digestive system. We do like we need to study about the accessory glands or the accessory organs as well, that we'll study in the next lecture. So the double muscle layer move food through the intestine by mixing the contraction, there's the segment contractions and the propulsive movement or the peristalsis, the same movement that were happening from esophagus onward to the stomach and the small intestine. The large intestine is much wider than the small intestine, but it is also much shorter as compared to the small intestine. The small intestine is the longest part of the digestive system. It is 22 feet, or you can say 6.7 meters long, while the large intestine is only 6 feet and is about 1.8 meter long. But the diameter of both the intestine is quite different from each other. Like large intestine has got a wider diameter as compared to the small intestine. Okay, so it's a bit of the summary that food comes into the small intestine from the stomach, and it start out as a semi-solid sludge out, like bile from the liver, enzyme from pancreas as well, water, mucus mixes with the slug, The mixture is quite watery by time it gets to the large intestine. See, up till here the food is ready to move to the large intestine, okay, and all the organ of the alimentary canal along with the accessory organ have taken part up till here. Okay, so up till the last slide, food was ready to enter into the large intestine. Large intestine is the final section of the gastrointestinal tract that perform the vital task of absorbing water and vitamins while converting digested food into the feces. Which will definitely be taken out from the body. By the time the digestive product reach the large intestine, almost all of the nutritionally useful part have been removed. The large intestine removes water from the like remainder material, passing semi-solid feces into the rectum to be expelled from the body through the anus. The mucosa is arranged in tightly packed straight tubular glands which consist of the cell specialized for water absorption, because the water absorption does take place in a large intestine, and the mucus secreting goblet cells to aid the passage of the feces. So the goblet cells do help the passage of the feces out from the body, and although shorter in the small intestine in the length, the large intestine is considerably thicker in diameter. Okay, here in this diagram you again need to practice about this diagram. See how the you must know the presence of all of these things. You again need to practice, like I've asked for the rest of the diagrams, the location of the common bile duct, left hepatic duct, right hepatic duct. Actually, I guess you won't be able to exactly understand the functions of these things, because hepatic duct are coming from the liver that we'll discuss in the upcoming lecture. So you aren't supposed to be worried about these stuff, because there are a few of the things, and I've already told you along with that slide that these things are going to be covered in the next lecture. So you aren't supposed to be worried about all of this stuff. Inshallah, we'll cover it in the next lecture. Okay, so again, the diagrammatic representation. Actually, these are the parts of the large intestine, as we have discussed about the different sections of the small intestine. And in the similar way, we have got the three part of the a large intestine, which just start from ascending colon, then it come up with the transverse colon and the descending colon, then the sigmoid colon. All of these are the parts of the large intestine. Okay, so here coming up with large intestine. The large intestine performs the vital functions of converting food into feces, absorbing essential vitamin produced by the gut bacteria, and reclaiming water from feces. The digested food or the chyme enters the large intestine from the small intestine through the ileocecal sphincter. Now you must be very clear about the names of all the sphincters of the digestive tract and their function as well. And the chyme passes through the cecum where it is mixed with the beneficial bacteria that do exist in our body that have colonized the large intestine throughout the person's life. We do have them, and the bacterial fermentation convert the chyme into feces and release the vitamins including vitamin K, B1, 2, 6, vitamin B12 and the biotin. Vitamin K is almost exclusively produced by the good bacteria and is essential in the proper clotting of the blood. And the absorption of water by the large intestine not only helps to condense and solidifies the feces but also allows the body to retain water to be used in other metabolic processes. Ions and nutrients released by gut bacteria and dissolved in water are also absorbed in the large intestine and used by the body for metabolism. The dried condensed fecal matter is finally stored in the rectum and sigmoid colon that we have discussed in the previous slide, and the sigmoid colon, until it can be eliminated from the body through the process of defecation. Okay, so here we come up with the final stages of the digestive activity and the last part of the digestive tract. So it's the rectum and anus. So rectum is the lower part of the large intestine that connect the sigmoid colon. It is about 15 centimeter, or you can 6 inches in long. It receives waste from the colon and store it until it passes out from the anus, because it's not immediately like taken out from the body. And the anus is the opening of the lower end of the rectum. You must be very clear about that. Anus is the opening of the lower end of the rectum through which the waste is passed out of the body. Colon and rectum absorb water, some nutrient, what we have eat and drink from and store to move the waste out of the body. In the colon, bacteria break down the food into smaller pieces. The inner layer of the mucosa absorb water and some nutrients. The mucosa also makes mucus that help the stool to move easily through the colon and rectum. As the stool moves through the colon, more water is absorbed from it and it becomes more solid. Stool leaves the colon and moves into the rectum. The rectum is a holding area for the stool. When the rectum is full, the external and internal sphincter muscles in the anal canal and anus relaxes to let the stool pass out of the body through the anus. So student, it was all about our digestive activity or the physiology of the digestive tract, and we are left with some of the relevant topic of the digestive system that will be covered in the upcoming lectures. And you are supposed to go with your assignments. I guess 2 or 3 of the assignments have been mentioned in your previous lecture and in this lecture, and separately there is a short assignment that will be shared with you. You are supposed to learn the lecture and you are supposed to do your assignment as well. Thank you.